Suellen, an American name, Kusher, German, Polish, Russian, just appended, and normally it's a really weird name, but I feel very comfortable in this room, because in this room it's probably a really plain name. Uncle Joe suggested something that got me really, really excited, and I think it should get some of you very, very excited. He suggested that grey hair equates to wisdom. So my fellow Ash Wands, and I know before the lights went down, I had a really good look, and there are quite a few of you out there. Some of you are camouflaged, but I know at heart you are an Ash Wand. Here is our chance to be wise, guys. I too am a product of TAFE, as are my 3 children. One of whom now is an interior architect and a design manager. The other one is a multimedia manager. And the third one is a media tart. He does a lot of media work. He is a very well-known analyst. And we all 4 of us, started at TAFE. So I feel very at home here. Do you, like me, and they, and many people that I have talked to recently, at times feel like you just want stuff to stop? I just want a minute. I just want, if I could just take a big deep breath and just get on top of things, I'd be okay. Because I absolutely assure you, I feel like that sometimes, and many people that I have been working with feel like that sometimes. So let's do it. Let's take a big deep breath. I want you to realise how easy this is. So wriggle your bottoms back in your seats. Both feet on the ground. Your hip is safe. Front row. I find it's easier if you shut your eyes. And just take in that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful deep breath. Right into your tummy. It expands your ribs. It fills you up with oxygen. And think about the day ahead as you exhale. Lovely, relaxing exhale. Think about being in this room, being ready. Am I ready to work? Am I ready to hear? Am I ready to listen? What do I anticipate from this day? And that's it. And that's how easy it is to take that second for ourselves and say, no, I need a breath. Everything I have learned about breathing is we die without it. It's important. But it's super important for resilience. It's super important, guys. Stopping and taking, that probably took us 10 seconds to take the breath, to take that moment for myself, to get that sense of being on top of stuff, of things not overwhelming us, is one of the easiest techniques because, let's face it, we've been breathing since we were born. It's something we're all really, really good at. So that's the easiest technique of all, if you want to refocus and refresh and feel like you're grabbing the energy back and I'm owning it. I'm going to use this wisdom that I have built up throughout my life because the one thing I want to be is resilient. And we are all amazingly resilient already. I cut myself and my body repairs itself. How incredible is that? The other thing I've noticed throughout my life, probably not yours but mine, as I expand, my skin is incredibly resilient. If I were to contract again, it would likewise be resilient. Our bodies are born for resilience. We are at the end of a long, long, long line of people who have survived because of that resilience. So, resilience is a talent that we already have been developing all the way through our lives. We're already already on the road. Look at that tree. Amazingly beautiful. What we want to do is cope. Now, I have a belief, it's my belief, I find it very, very effective belief. I believe, as a general rule, no one's given more than they can handle. It's just that we want to handle it well. We want to have enough time and space and energy for ourselves at the end of these constant changes. And we've got to take back some control about the forecasting that we do for ourselves in our own lives. We make it up. We can change it. We've got to start forecasting resilience. We've got to start refreshing. We've got to start refocusing. And we've got to be hopeful. Because if we're not, it's just too darn hard. So I want to share with you over the next little wee while some thoughts and ideas about where the pitfalls are and then what we actually can do. Now, amazingly, when I get to what we can actually do, you're probably going to sit there and go, oh, I really do that. Well, if you do that, pat yourself on the back, that's really good. Means you have some capability and some capacity in that area. That's what the wisdom's all about. It's about knowing that I can do that and using it at that critical moment to make my life a little bit easier. What you believe is really, really important. Have you noticed that if you think something's going to be bad and difficult, it normally is? So what we believe and what we project to a certain degree affects the experience that we have. Now, the great piece of news is that we are in control of this. So what I choose to believe is hugely important in the run that I have through a change or an experience that I'm living with. I choose to believe that I can cope with anything that comes at me. All I've got to do is figure out how. And I start with that nice big deep breath. What you believe has an energy attached to it. It's interesting that a lot of the speakers before me talked about the energy in the room, the energy when they arrived here. And yet, if we take energy out and talk about it in a facilitated environment, people think you're a bit of a wacko. But there's definitely energy attached to how we're feeling, what we're doing, the attitude that we carry with us. So what you believe has an energy attached to it, and that energy can be contagious. It can start to affect other people. And I don't know about you, but I love working with people who are hopeful, who are focused, who are refreshed, who pick themselves up, who go, that's what we're doing and that's where we're going. So these beliefs I choose because they are helpful to me. The other thing that I absolutely know is that the energy is created by chemicals in our system. So when there is an event, how I think about that event, how I feel that event, and what I decide about that event creates a chemical mix in my system. And guys, this is the best drug dealer you will ever come across, because my body creates these chemicals in under a second. And there's 1,400 of them that we know about so far. So if something happens and I decide I don't like it, it makes 1,400 really, really difficult chemicals. This serious stuff. Adrenaline, cortisol. This is what they put in that syringe and inject into someone's heart if they have a heart attack. So I'm now trying to figure out how I am going to cope with all of these chemicals on board. I want you to think about it. You know that this happens. You get that dread feeling, you get that feeling. I want you to think about, where does that start in your body? Because where you feel it first is your warning sign. It's the sign to tell you, look, I need to take a breath. I need to think about how I am reacting or responding here. I need to think about what I'm believing here, because I want to make the situation better, not worse. Now the great thing is, your body also makes 1,400 fabulous chemicals. These are the feel-good chemicals. These are the things like the endorphins that people hear about. Interferon, interleukin, they're fabulous chemicals. They give us a great high. And often when we've got those chemicals on board, we feel like we can do anything. The important thing is here, you have the switch. You are the one who decides which chemical mix I carry through the day. Now the difficult chemicals really are difficult for us, because if we don't use them up and we don't exercise at the end of the day, or we don't jump on the trampoline with our kids, or we don't go for a walk with the dog, or we don't do something physical for ourselves, we don't use them up. You can of course use them up by yelling at people. I don't suggest that one. By beating yourself up, I don't suggest that one. By predicting doom and gloom, gosh, haven't we all been there? But it's no fun. So I'm very, very focused on my resilience. It's the ability to recover from or withstand a difficult situation. And this is what we're trying to do. I don't want to go into the past and dredge up how horrible and awful it was for me last time before. And I don't want to go into the future and predict how horrible it's going to be next time. Resilience exists in the moment in which we live, right now, this second, right now, this very second now. So there's a real tip there. If this is where feel-good resilience energy is, I've got to keep dragging my brain back from the future, and I've got to keep dragging it back from the past and live now, in this second. What can I do for myself right now? I also find it really fabulously fascinating that in a lot of your current advertising, you actually have the antidote for finding things difficult and finding it difficult to cope with all the changes that we have around us. And the antidote is the doer. That's it. That's what we've got to do. We've got to do something. We've got to take action, because the second we do something and the second we take action, our body is gobbling up all of those chemicals. It's using them up. It's creating more energy. It makes us feel good because we have done something. So doing something is really the antidote to feeling out of control, to feeling things are overwhelming me, to feeling that I've kind of lost my focus and I'm not really quite sure where I'm going. It's such a simple antidote. Do something. Almost anything will work. So, taking a breath will work. I want you to think about the other things that you can do for yourself. Here's some of the things I would strongly invite you to consider avoiding. Black and white thinking. Things are not good or bad. They just are. The second we categorise an event into a good event or a bad event, we make it very difficult for ourselves. What we're trying to do is go, it's happened, what can I do about it? It's here, what can I do about it? What are my choices? What are my options? Don't waste your energy having an argument about whether it's good or bad. It's mute. If something's happened, it's happened. Let's move past that. The rigid rules that we set for ourselves about something being good or being back can really mess with our progress. So I try and really work on myself to not go there. It's not black and white. It's not good or bad. It's not helpful or unhelpful. It's happened. What can I do with it? And you know, we talked about this a little bit before. One of the other speakers asked, you know, how many of you sometimes make that decision to be a bit negative? I make that decision sometimes. Sometimes I'm just negative Nancy like you wouldn't believe. But I get really sick of myself. Because I know that jumping to those negative conclusions doesn't help me. I acknowledge that I'm there, but I watch the future telling. Things like, I'll never be able to. It won't work out because it didn't work out last time, and the company that I used to work for did exactly the same thing and it didn't work out there, so it's not going to work out here. And I don't know what to do anyway. It's all that I can't language that we have with ourselves. That's easy, you can stop that because you make it up. See, this stuff's great because most of it we make up. Avoid giving too much meaning to situations. Are you convincing yourself that if something goes wrong, the result will be totally unbearable? Are you catastrophizing and awfulizing? That's my word. I'd like it in the dictionary, please. Awfulizing. We make things awful. They're not awful, they just are. So I've learned to really pull the reins in on me exaggerating a situation when it happens. I try and contain it to reality. And so I try to avoid catastrophizing it. And I also invite all of you to come up with a technique for helping your colleagues not catastrophize or awfulize either. Is that real, or are we just imagining it's going to be that difficult? How do we know what's actually happening? Are we really just guessing that's what's happening? It's some of that language and some of that technique that you can use on yourself, but you can use it on your colleagues as well. Because remember, that energy is contagious. Are you blaming yourself? I'm pretty good at this one too. I can be responsible for everything. Just watch. Watch if you're blaming yourself for anything unpleasant, for someone else being unhappy, for someone else being miserable. Are you really engaging with this sense of dread so much that you are taking on the responsibility of everything being difficult? That's where the wisdom comes in, I think. That's where you start asking yourself wise questions. How on earth can this be my fault? How on earth can I be responsible for how someone else feels? Really, really watch the guilt trip, guys. It's such a waste of energy. Because remember, we're trying to do something. Not past, not future. Do something now. So putting yourself down is not part of the antidote, not at all. This is another one that sometimes I am Madam Should. Oh, you know what I should do? You know what should happen? You know what they should have done? You know the decision they should have made? You know what should have happened to the budget? Should will drive you nuts. Avoid the shoulds, avoid the ought to, avoid the musts. This is the guilt again. Are you constantly disappointed? If you are constantly disappointed, it's a tip. You're in guilt land. Are you constantly angry? That's another tip. I'm not taking control and focusing on what will be good for me and what will be good for the environment. Refresh, refocus. Are you constantly frustrated? Another one. Frustration tells me I'm not doing anything. I'm not making a decision to take the step to do something. So we can easily stop the should statements. They come out of my mouth so I can stop them. You reckon? This is definitely the safest thing we can do for ourselves, is just be. Stop the judging, stop the guilt trips, stop the imagining, and start projecting with the talents and skills and ability that I have. What can I do in this second that will help me move towards the focus, move towards where I want to go, move towards what I want to happen? Because everything you do affects the environment, and everything you don't do affects the environment. So I really want to encourage you to consider that doing nothing is actually doing something. So whether I do nothing or do something, I am going to have an impact on the environment. I'm also going to have an impact on myself. Sometimes the wise decision is to go, deep breath, no, I'm not going to do anything just yet. That's very different from not doing anything. It's making the decision that I am going to decide the best thing that I can possibly do so that I remain energetic. Here's some things we can do. Here's where the technique comes in. And if you are doing this in any part of your life, you can bring it into the work environment, you can bring it into the home environment. It means you already have the technique. Now, these are not hard. How hard is this? There's only one thing I get to control, my own on-off switch. That's it. That's the thing I get to control, it's the thing you get to control too. So let's control it. Let's stop blaming. Doesn't matter. It's what can I do? Blame will really, really, really bring you down, and it will bring other people down. And it is not productive. Strategically looking at what we could do better next time is productive. Blaming isn't. It also makes people miserable. Stop justifying. Every time you start to recognise that you are excusing why you did something, you are trying to explain why you did something, you're justifying. I need actions that are effective, that carry us forward. Start making choices. Take the breath, decide what you're going to do. Do it actively. Do it as often as you possibly can. Do it knowingly and do it consciously. Coping with disappointments and things that have changed that are out of your control can be really, really difficult. And sometimes we're sad, and that's okay. And sometimes we grieve because we examine what we've lost. We examine what it used to be like. We relive the good parts of our past. And that can be pretty difficult. Particularly if we are projecting a future that is less attractive to us. I don't know why we do that, but somehow we do. Change is a shock. And it completely destabilises us for a little while. Because we try to imagine our life in that new environment, and mostly we don't have enough information to do that accurately. So what human beings do is they fill in the gaps to the best of their ability in their world. So I'll fill out in the gaps. And if I'm in a really, really despondent mood, I'll fill them in tragically. And if I'm in a really, really good, resilient mood, I'll probably fill them in hopefully. And I know which one I prefer. So when there is a massive change, and it destabilises you, and it destabilises your expectations, I think it's very wise to consider going slowly, not rushing. not jumping into a future that is going to be more difficult or reliving a past that was fabulous. Because guys, that fabulous past is in our memory, and memory is not accurate either. So think about what's the best choice. What can I do? Not do I want to do. What can I do right now that will make me feel better? Now this one is one we have to work on all the time. Be prepared, because it's going to change again. And the rate at which things change is escalating because of the amount of technology and communication technique that we have now. So we are noticing a rapid rate of change that was probably always there, but now we're seeing it, we're getting it, we're being bombarded with it. So things are going to change again. Prepare yourself for that. We tend to want to imagine that things are going to stay the same, because I know I can cope with that. And when they change, I'm not quite sure what they're going to change to, so that can be a bit scary. So we try and keep things the same. So I challenge myself, and I challenge you, to find new ways to accept the reality or the inevitability that things are going to change. But wait, this can be really good too, because if things are really, really awful and they're really, really horrible, they'll change. And if they're really, really good and they're really, really fabulous, they might change for the better. Why would we imagine that they would change for the worse? I always imagine they're going to change for the better. So I've always got plenty of energy. And you know, sometimes they do change for the better. And sometimes they don't, but I have the energy to cope with it. So what you believe and what you project is hugely important in remaining resilient. All of us, every one of us doubts ourselves at times. And I don't think that's really difficult. And I don't think that's disastrous. I think doubting yourself at times is really, really human and is very effective. But too much doubt can be debilitating. So, if you are doubting yourself, nothing wrong with that. But the antidote is to say, okay, in this moment of doubt, what is the best thing that I can do for myself? What is the best thing that I can do for the people around me? What action can I take that will get me into that energetic state where suddenly I realise I have enough gumption, get up and go, to do something. So constantly be working on ourselves. Notice the signs. They are usually there. We often tend to ignore them. Stay alert. Register the signs of oncoming change. Prepare yourself for it. Don't be surprised by it and don't be shocked by it. Forearmed is absolutely forewarned. I can think about what my choices will be. And you know what? The human brain loves this. This is the stuff that makes it happy. It is happy when it is problem solving. That's the part of the brain that where our logic lives. That's the part of the brain where the switch lives. When I can figure out what my options are and what I could do, should do, might do, what are the possibilities? If I did this might eventuate. If I did this might eventuate. That's the part of the brain that's happy because it's forearmed. And so we don't get such a shock when something comes along. And this is using that brain power very, very effectively. This is how we work out strategy. Those of you who are strategists know that. Start using that skill and that system. on yourself. Focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. The thing that drives us nuts, it frustrates the heck out of us, is when we spend time looking at what we can't do. Can't change the government, can't change the weather, can't change the decision my children are making. All of those things that are out of our hands really, really frustrate us. So grab that decision making and pull it right back and say, I'm going to own what I can do, not what I can't do. Whenever you find yourself being frustrated, whenever you find yourself being disappointed, whenever you find yourself in a state where you are full of indecision, pull it back. What can I do? And really, guys, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you take an action. Stand up, get a drink of water, go for a walk around the block, do a different task, think about another problem. It doesn't matter what it is. It's doing something. It's taking action that de-stresses us. A little while ago, I want to give you an example of how this works. A little while ago, a mountain and I were coming together, and the mountain won. It was not pretty. I made some very poor decisions at the time. And 2 years later, 2 years of long, hard physiotherapy, I said to my husband, Hugh, lovely man, I said to Hugh, I want you to take me back to the mountain again. And he said, are you nuts? I said, no, I want to try and ski again. So we decided we'd drive there so that I could kind of prepare myself. And as we're driving along, I was absolutely fine until I saw the snow on the mountain. And I had my one and only panic attack that I've ever had in my life. Never had one before, never had one since. It was awful, don't want another one. I had a panic attack. And I said to him, I'm losing it. He said, what do you mean you're losing it? I said, I'm really starting to panic. Here's what he said to me. Wind the window down. Well, it was a button, it wasn't a line. Button. Wind the window down. Stick your head out the window. Smell the eucalyptus trees. Have a drink of water. See, it doesn't matter what you do, guys, as long as you do something. That pulled me out of a panic attack. A panic attack. Imagine what making the decision to just do something would do for you on those days when you feel overwhelmed, out of control, not quite sure what should be happening, what you should be doing. Just think about it. It's doing anything, because one action builds another action. You're the only person who can look after you, really. So value yourself. Value this human being that you are. Decide right here, right now, that you're going to make much wiser decisions. I make that decision every day. I get up in the morning, I do some exercises, and I say, today I am going to be wise, and look what happened to me. We can do that. We can flick the switch in the morning and say, I'm going to think about what I'm doing today. I'm going to take a breath before I make any decision. I'm going to make the wise decision, not the impulsive decision. You need to be your own caretaker. There is no one else who is going to caretake for you like you will. So this is your body, it's your life, it's your experience. Really decide that I am going to look after me. Always choose kindness. Always, 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 always choose kindness, and you will find that kindness will come back to you. As a guide, I try and decide if what I am doing is being kind to me and kind to others. And it's a pretty good guide. It encompasses everything that we've talked about this morning. You too are the result of a long line of resilient survivors. So you and I need to keep it going. So I'd like to do one final little exercise with you. I'd like to invite you to just sit back in your chairs and take that big deep breath. And in your dominant hand, for me it's my right hand, for you it might be your left hand, but in your dominant hand, I want you to think about putting in that hand all the indecision, all the stuff that's really annoying me, the things that are distracting me from being present today, doing what I need to do and enjoying myself. All of the rubbish that's taking your attention, I just want you to sit it in your right hand. And in your other hand, I want you to sit in there the sensation that you have when you are on top of things. I want you to sit in there the way it feels to know that you are moving forward. The way it feels when you have plenty of energy, when you know you can cope with anything that comes at you, that lovely, refreshed, resilient state in the other hand. So now, we have the difficulty and the discomfort in the one hand, and the joy and the pleasure in the other. Take that dominant hand and just turn it over and let it all dribble away. Let it fall into the earth. Let it go on its merry way, because we don't want it to stay today. And with your other hand, with all those wonderful, beautiful, spectacular sensations that make me know I can do anything, I want you to very, very slowly bring it into your sternum and just let your hand rest there. I am the caretaker of me. I can do anything I choose. One last deep breath. Building resilience is achieved day by day, one step at a time, one moment at a time. I really encourage you to keep practicing. Thank you very much.